live, and we would like to thank Sylvia for joining us today to talk about her presentation at the BIT15 conference. So we only have about 15 to 20 minutes, so I'd like each of our virtual attendees to just quickly introduce yourself and tell us what you do for your job and where you're from. So I will start. Patrice Presco, and I am in Ithaca, New York at Cornell University, and I'm an instructional designer here.
Hi everybody, my name is AK. I am in Boston, Massachusetts at the University of Massachusetts in Boston, and jack of all trades, so for today I'm an educational tinkerer.
Camille, you want to go next?
Sure. My name is Camille Rutherford, and I am a faculty member at Brock University in the Faculty of Education, working with teacher education, and I am currently in Santa Cruz, California.
Peter, you want to go next? We'll just go right in order from the bottom of the screen.
Can you hear me? Mm-hmm. My name is Peter Cameron. I'm a teacher from Thunder Bay, Ontario at Thunder Bay Catholic District School Board. I've been teaching for 20 years at St. Elizabeth's School, and I'm very interested in connections, particularly making connections with educators from all facets of the education community. So I've actually just started a project called Connect Ed.
And I'm Sarah Springer. I'm out on the West Coast at the Middlebury Institute of International Studies, and I work with teacher education, and I'm an adjunct faculty member and do faculty development and instructional design. And I'm really interested in project-based learning and the connection to making and maker ed.
Great, thank you everyone, and now we'll turn it over to Sylvia so we can hear about what you have to say today.
Well, it's fantastic to be here. Thanks, Helen. I didn't know you guys did this, but this is great. So I was just talking at BIT15, bringing it together, and about the maker movement and the kinds of things that are happening in classrooms all around the world using these tools like 3D printers, tools that make it easier to make things, to learn about electronics, to learn about STEM and science, technology, engineering, and math subjects, and what schools are doing around the world, in these areas. So I showed some kind of far out stuff, and I showed some classroom stuff, and we talked about this sort of intersection of, we all have a theory that kids learn by doing, but how does that actually happen in the classroom?
Got quite a chuckle when you added the one clip. It was tweeted out yesterday where someone had hooked up Arduinos, Super Arduinos, to a knitted frog.
Yes.
It happened at BIT.
I was looking at the Twitter hashtag BIT15 yesterday, and there was this fantastic workshop going on where someone had knitted a frog, knitted all the internal organs and stuff, and then had wired it to do, I'm not exactly sure what, but using an Arduino, a type of Arduino, which is one of these open source microcontrollers that are really popular with the maker community because they're being used all over the world to solve all kinds of different problems, and people are sharing their designs, both software and hardware, their ideas, and people of all ages, people in every country, and so it's this global learning community that's happening right now, and it's outside of school. So what can schools learn from that? How can they open their doors to these opportunities? How can they, let their kids see this kind of future that's happening right now, and that learning doesn't happen on a textbook.
And with over 1,000 education tech fanatics, advocates in the room, it was a very exciting talk to listen to, and all kinds of tweets going out about the kind of information Sylvia was sharing. It was very exciting, dynamic, and energizing space to be in this morning. It was very exciting.
I love the idea that you're looking at the IT people as assets and partners rather than the enemy. Because in a lot of schools, it's like, you know, teachers are fighting against the network Nazis, you know, and things like that. I think that there's a lot of misunderstandings between the two groups. I think that, you know, IT people often come from industry, and in industry you're trained to drive down the trouble tickets. That's a measure of success. The fewer problems you have, the better job you're doing. But in schools, when people are trying new things, you want questions, you want problems, you know, because teachers should be experimenting with new things.
Sylvia is referring to the fact that this is a combined conference with OASBO. It's the tech side of ed tech, the people who run the tech within school systems here in Ontario, and they're both on site at the same time, running sessions collaboratively and interchanging with each other. I actually had some ed tech people sitting in my session yesterday on digital storytelling and talking about how to manage and tinker within digital storytelling spaces.
Don't let her do it to you.
We're on the air.
We're on the air. so
come on, stay in the background. He left. Chicken.
Very, very aware of people being recorded when they don't want to be. Maybe what we can do is just turn it over to people who may have a question for Sylvia that other ed tech people out in the province who are not at BIT can learn from your questions.
I think I had more of a comment than a question. I'm passionate about modeling to our students the very powerful use of social media in the classroom. Not necessarily having them use social media per se, but as a classroom teacher, really modeling the positive power of social media. And I believe for the first time in our 21st century that our students really, if it's done correctly, believe that they have a voice and they have the ability to make a positive impact on the world. And so I guess just an example, bringing it back to the tinkering and the innovation, my students last year had K-Cups, an incredible number of K-Cups that they had collected as a result of volunteering. And so instead of throwing them in the garbage, we decided to do something with them, and we used them as a learning tool within the classroom and made a video. They innovated, made a video, shared what we were doing with our K-Cups, and credit to them, through their voice and social media, they were featured on Canada's OWL magazine for kids and on the CBC News. And we have now a number of different classes throughout the world using K-Cups in classrooms. So just an example of how, I guess, we can teach our kids how to have a powerful voice, innovate, create, and make a difference.
Well, I think what you're saying is absolutely true. I believe that student voices is grounded in action, that when kids have something that they're passionate about that they've done, it's much more effective, to then broadcast about it. The example you used is perfect. We often don't give kids the time to actually care about what they're working on in class. We tell them what to do, and then we're surprised that they don't really invest in it, which shouldn't be surprising at all. And yet, we're so rushed for time. I mean, time is just this incredibly precious commodity in classrooms, and I don't think we're really giving kids the time to think about the work that they're doing and become passionate and be invested in it. I don't think you can, I said this in the keynote, you can't do empowerment to kids. It's this cycle of citizenship. It's a cycle of voice and stepping up into responsibilities that you didn't even know you could do yourself, and then you have something to talk about. I worked for 10 years. I was president of Generation Yes, which was a nonprofit organized around the idea of teaching students tech skills in order to help their own schools and communities. So kids doing student voice That's kids doing tech support, kids teaching teachers technology, helping community organizations. And the secret mission was always about student empowerment. It was giving kids something important to talk about that they could share with others, and in doing so, develop their voice.
Absolutely.
I think it's really important, that idea about empowering students, and I have a question about integrating that Maker Faire experience into the classroom. Brock University and our local school district, the District School Board of Niagara, we have a partnership, and we've created an educational research and innovation hub that's located within a school that brings researchers and grad students and ed tech startups, and students have an opportunity to interact. And we had a very small sort of Maker Faire last spring that we had math faculty, science grad students, executives from IBM, Intel, and high school kids working together. And I think it was an incredible experience seeing some students in grade 10 struggling with the Snap Circuit project, but the guy from IBM is struggling with them and all working together. And I think that's fantastic. And there's so many great weekend Maker Fairs and after-school Maker Fairs, which I think are fantastic. But I'm getting kind of tired of not seeing them during the school day, not seeing that same experience integrated into the regular curriculum. So do you have any suggestions of how that can be done?
That's a very, very common question. You're not seeing that just in isolation. That's happening all over the world. You know, people are taking advantage of after-school programs as a kind of easier way to bring making in, and then they're thinking, well, eventually this will sort of sneak back into the curriculum. But in many cases it doesn't happen. There's some very tough questions that schools have to ask and answer together. You know, it can't just be one teacher saying, "Oh, I'm going to change my science curriculum." That's not, that's not the way schools work. Certainly not big districts or school boards. That's just not the way things happen in a kind of a one-off way. But teacher collaboration time is so important. There's so few times for teachers to talk to each other and actually plan for these new things and to ask these hard questions like, why are we teaching math and science separately? I mean, in some schools I have seen, and teachers have told me, that when they start these after-school programs, they use what's happening there as a model, as an example, and saying, look what the kids can do. Look how closely connected it is. They do a really creative exercise in calendar juggling and make more time. Most schools don't tackle all these things at once. I mean, it's like you're not going to change the staff roles, the bell schedules, the subject level definitions, get rid of all curriculum, change pedagogy, change all teachers' attitudes, convince the parents. It's like that's not. So people kind of tend to pick around the edges, and I hope, as long as you try and keep moving forward and giving teachers the opportunity to say, well, this is working, how can we make it better? Never being satisfied.
And I think, Camille, because we have common space, we teach teachers in faculties of education, I think it's really important to introduce it at the faculties as well, so that teachers are familiar with that tinkering, making, mucking around with stuff before they actually get into some classrooms. I think that's an important piece that we can contribute to the conversation.
Okay, why don't we I think Sarah hasn't had a chance to ask a question yet, and I know it's 10:15 already.
I don't know if it's a question as much as a comment. It really resonated with me watching the Twitter stream while you were speaking. There were a lot of things people saying it's not about buying things, it's not about necessarily having a designated physical space. There's a whole bunch of it that's also just about mindsets and things that can be brought in without a lot of big budgets and without necessarily a lot of huge changes. That resonated strongly with me. Do you think that having a designated space impedes that?
I worry about that. Honestly, I do. I think that the lesson of the computer lab is not a good story. I don't think it's a good lesson. You know, 30 years ago, a lot of excited teachers said, the computer's going to change the world. They brought them into their classrooms, and then schools looked at that and said, well, not every teacher is as excited as you. We'll take those, we'll put them down the hall, we'll make a computer lab, you'll be the computer teacher, you'll teach computer, and eventually we'll integrate it into the subject areas. Well, you know, the integration really didn't happen. Kids go visit the computer lab every couple of weeks. You know, and it gave an excuse for math and science not to change. And I worry, I definitely worry that you know, all these makerspaces are going to turn into museums of 3D printers, and the kids are going to go visit them every once in a while and print out one thing and then go back to the science class that hasn't changed, you know, for 100 years. So, you know, on the other hand, you want to keep kids safe, you want to lock up the expensive stuff, you want to, you know, I mean, I get all the reasons that we do it, but I think we can, if we look at it more like an art studio, you can have an art studio, but you can also have art supplies in every classroom. You know, we can try and accommodate, push the things out that aren't expensive, that are more useful on a day-to-day basis. Programming, I think, is a huge part, to me, of the maker movement. And that certainly doesn't need to happen in a special place. You know, I favor the kinds of computer programs that you can teach the kids once and use many times, like the whole Scratch logo ecosystem is really becoming entrenched in a lot of the robotics kits that are coming out there. I think it's only a matter of time before some of the Arduino-like tools use more Scratch-like programming. And it's happening. I mean, the Hummingbird Robotics Kit is an excellent kit that I think crosses that line really, really well. We use it in our teacher workshops. It's easy to teach. It's easy for people to learn quickly. And yet it has this high ceiling that people can use the programming languages that it works with, you know, for life. So
Teaching teachers how to program.
Well, yeah.
Well, play with and tinker and make with programming so that they're comfortable in that space, in that sandbox space, and then they bring the kids in and play with them and muck around and play together.
Yeah, there are programming languages. I mean, you know, my partner, my co-author Gary Stager, does a lot of model teaching. Like he'll go to a school and teach the third graders how to use Logo or Turtle Art or something. And the teachers then watch, and then they have a conversation later about what happened. Because, you know, a lot of teachers look at this stuff like Hour of Code and think, well, not my kids, not my school, not my community. But when you see your kids doing it and getting it like that, and they all do, you know, you can't say that anymore. It has to be something that it opens your eyes. You see the world in a different way as a teacher.
And an hour of code comes up in December usually. There's a week of code are nice ways to kickstart something like that.
Look, I do not mind the PR spotlight being shown on the importance of code. That's great. When I look deeply into what they offer on the site, there's a lot of puzzles. It's more solving puzzles than actually learning to code. But it looks like code. And it's like, you know, do I hate this? Do I, you know, am I just mad because, I don't know, you know, obviously an hour isn't enough. It's a metaphor for, you know, bringing something into school that should be brought into school. But again, it's these hard questions. Where does it fit? Is it math? Is it science? I know in the United States, computer science isn't required in any state as a graduation requirement. It's in 9 states, one of which it's considered a math. 8 states it's considered science. A couple of states are trying to do this sort of hack where they call computer science a foreign language, which I think is a terrible idea. You know, just because it has the word language in it doesn't, you know, but it's a hack. People see it as, oh, we require kids to take foreign language. Wouldn't it be, you know, great if they could take computer science? So I don't know. Everybody's looking at a different place. This is what I think. I think everyone has a different lens. Everyone's working at a different place on the lever, right? Some people, you know, have a talk to global audiences. Some people are working in the classroom with kids. It's all important. It all has to be done. There's no one right answer. There's no one right right way to do this. I always feel sorry for people who come to my how to get started in making session, because it's a trick. It's like it's a trick question, and they're thinking, oh, she's going to give me a handout, she's going to give me a shopping list, and she's going to give me a building plan, and I'm like, well, it's all different. I'm like, oh.
You're going to make.
Yeah, we have to think,
yeah.
We have to plan, we have to look at the needs of the community and the needs of the students. We have to involve the students, and everyone's like, oh, just tell me how to do it.
So I think what we'll do is maybe final question, Patrice, because I know your passion is around STEM with within girls, with girl programming and making and tinkering. Do you have a question you'd like to ask Sylvia?
Yeah, my question is access and equity, and I know spaces are great, but a lot of schools potentially can't afford to either have the resources to create one or provide professional development. And so what I've been looking at is how we can use MOOCs or other forms of digital content to help with that. And I just wondered if you had been thinking about that at all, about how we can increase access and equity to professional development and resources that could help those teachers.
Well, I think there's no question that access has helped a lot of teachers. It's before you could get on Twitter, before there were websites. You might feel that you were the only teacher in your area who had these feelings, that you weren't satisfied with the textbook, and science just didn't feel alive, and you might never meet anyone else who had those feelings. And now we can form these tribes and communities and support each other in figuring out how to do it. Now, does it actually come back to the school and make real change happen? I think that only happens in face-to-face conversations, the people you're working with. I think the opportunities for MOOCs and professional development are amazing. I met so many people virtually and online, and they're doing fantastic things and sharing, and I think it's all good.
Okay. If everyone's okay, and other questions?
I have another question. A couple of comments and a question. Number one, you touched on the fact of bringing in our future teachers, and I think that is really important, is making them aware of what we're doing in the classroom. And two, my wife is an ELKP teacher in Ontario, and we have inquiry-based learning. And our kids are really quite inquisitive, and at a young age they ask a lot of questions. However, as they get older, they should be asking more questions, but we find is that they actually are asking fewer questions. And how, I guess, is the question is, how do we have our kids continue to ask rich, deep questions? And finally, I guess my question is this. As teachers, we know what works best is by modeling to our students. They get it when they see it. And I know that we go to workshops and we go to conferences and we talk theory and we talk about what it should look like. But I know, and I've had this myself, as teachers really, I think, to get it, need to see it in action. So the question might be, how do we have teachers who really want to see it in action, tinkering or 21st century learning skills, how do we bring those teachers literally into our classrooms to model to teachers within the learning environment?
I think that's a great challenge. I think you should work on that. That's a great idea. When we do our professional development events, we always start with the do. We always try and remind teachers to take off their teacher hats and put on their learner hats, and remember that beginner's mindset. I think it's important for teachers to find that within themselves, to feel that feeling of determined frustration, and the elation when you figure something out. And I think that often pre-service teachers don't see a lot of good models, and any way to share more models I think is fantastic. Can you just put up webcams and periscope people's classrooms and just have this like big old network of teachers teaching all the time that you could sort of zoom into and watch. I mean, wouldn't that be cool?
Well, that's my hope.
Anyway,
A window into different people's classrooms throughout the world.
I am going to let Sylvia get going because I know
appreciate
that she
I got a plane to catch.
she does
so.
have a plane to catch and a drive yet.
Like literally, that's not a joke. That's not a metaphor. It's literally I have a plane to catch.
And hopefully a smooth sail across the
Well, I'm
the
only going.
causeway.
I'm going to Minneapolis, so.
Enjoy, and thank you
you
so
so
much
much.
for taking
Well,
the time.
thanks
I'm
for
just going to
reaching out.
turning this and responding so quickly.
Okay. No problem. Thank you so much. I need my suitcase though.
Oh, very
Your
good.
computer's propped up on my, my
And
makeshift podium.
I think what we'll do is we'll just continue for a few minutes.
Oh, your cheerleader waits now.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Safe journey. And a new connection is made.
Right. Thanks,
So,
Ellen, for setting that up. That was great to hear from her.
Yeah, a very interesting conversation this morning, and a lot of the stuff that is happening here at this conference is really just what she's talking about, or people talking about technology and talking about what they're doing in their classrooms. Some teachers here who are brand new to the whole ed tech scene because somebody brought them. There was one tweet this morning where somebody said she's bringing somebody new to this conference every year so that they can experience this. The session yesterday, Brenda Skillen and Brenda Sherry and Peter Skillen ran Minds on Media, a full-day workshop just on talking and here comes Brenda.
Hello, people from around the world. Happy learning.
And 3D printing and mucking with like knit frogs and Arduinos. It was quite an interesting session.
I actually have to run to a meeting. But it was great talking about it. I hope you guys have time to finish up the conversation. And I love Camille's idea of doing a virtually connecting around a makerspace. I think that's a really interesting thing to think about.
And I think that bye. And if anybody else has any final comments before I stop broadcasting.
I think it was really interesting watching the Twitter stream this morning, the different things that resonated, and I kept thinking between, I also work with pre-service teachers that come from K-12, but I'm in a higher ed context, and so thinking about maker ed and higher ed. And has anyone seen or heard of something that's actually called making, referred to in that way, but that shows up in higher ed contexts? Or is it, my impression is it's K-12 is the place where people are talking about that, and I was curious what anyone else thought about that.
I think at our university, and that was part of the reason why we had this maker fair, and we had it with higher ed and K-12, because in our interactive design digital humanities program, they had been looking at doing their own, and had been looking at bringing in Arduinos and Raspberry Pis and Makey, and then we were doing the same thing. Like said, why don't we just do that together? So I think that is happening. As well, what was interesting, one of the reps from IBM said that they pull out Arduinos during their lunchtime and play with them and do all interesting things. And so I think it's a very broad community. The thing is that we're not working on it together, and they're taking place in these isolated situations, and they're not working on that together. So I think it already is there in higher ed. And again, it seems that it may be, an engineering program, they're going to have a day or a weekend and do this sort of maker experience. But I think that is there. And it was end of September in Toronto at Mars, they had a robotics hackathon, and they had a number of teams from engineering programs. And so as Sylvia was saying about getting away from the constraints of those Lego robots competitions or FIRST Robotics, is that they had all these robotics tools out there, and said, now go ahead and make something that related to health or helping. And again, probably about half the people that were there were engineering students. And so they were in there, and their engineering programs had sent them and said, if you want to participate, we'll cover your costs and do that. So I think that is taking place in the higher ed communities and in courses, just not necessarily in a public format, so that you could see if you're not part of that program or department.
It sounds, Camille, like it's almost a tripartite business and higher ed and K-12 coming together to make that space happen.
I think the thing is that I think just as Erica was saying about inquiry-based learning in kindergarten and how we should have that all the way across, it's the same thing that's happening in higher ed, that people are wanting, they want value for their money, they want hands-on experience, they want real-world experience. That's what the maker experience can give them. And people are seeing that, so it's really this kindergarten pedagogy is now being distributed all the way up the continuum, right up to higher ed, because it is a more engaging experience. It is a cognitively challenging experience, and is a very rewarding experience for students and educators as well. So hopefully when we start seeing our commonalities, we'll start seeing more of that take place.
AK, do you have any experience with making and tinkering?
Not much experience in making. I do know that our instructional design program has made a new partnership with a space that really sounds like a maker space. So that seems like it's going to be a very interesting thing to experiment in and also see how it grows. The one thing that I was thinking as Camille was talking a few moments ago about the authentic experiences and the hands-on experiences is also the other narrative. I want to pick, as a learner, I want to pick the most efficient path through my education, so shorten the time frame of learning, maybe get a master's in a year type of thing. And how do we reconcile maker spaces, which are, I would say, by nature, a little more free from the time constraint? You're not rushed through the process because you're learning, with that narrative of, I gotta be done with my degree in a year.
Again, I think it's, as educators, we need to start informing our students that the piece of paper isn't going to get you anywhere. It's the experience that's behind it. And I think that sometimes when you see students that, hey, I graduated and I have a bachelor's degree or whatever, now I can get a job, and it's, well, what did you do? They did a piece of paper and they didn't get a learning experience, and they didn't take out of that. And so again, it's on us as throughout the entire system, is that you get out what you put in, and let students know that just because you graduated from a program and got a certificate doesn't necessarily mean that anybody's going to want to hire you. You have to be passionate and engaged with what it is that you learn and be able to demonstrate that to add value to whatever organization that you are joining. And again, that's hard because we've told them, oh, if you do this degree, you'll get a job, or do this and you'll have a better chance. But we have to let them know that people don't want to hire a piece of paper. They want to hire someone that will contribute, be an engaged member of their workplace community.
And I think, Peter, you would bring that piece in because you see it from both sides of the kind of the making and tinkering space, with the practitioner versus those who just are academic about it.
Yeah, as a classroom teacher and a grade 6 teacher for many years, I do know that the tinkering for sure is one thing, and the hands-on experience for our kids, that's one. But also having them realize, for me, that their voice matters and counts. It also makes students understand that they have a place in the world that can happen now, and they can start finding their path now. having said that as well, I've had lots of experience with, I want to address so much focus on achievement, and I am all about accountability, for sure, 100%. However, when we have to be careful how we judge how successful a school or a classroom or even a student is by assigning a mark or a grade to that student. I've had students who have excelled, particularly last year. I'm thinking of 2 or 3 students who came to school every day because they had the opportunity to tinker and to learn. Like, they were learning their math via these hands-on objects, and for me it was the K-cups. But this student particularly was incredibly skilled with her hands, and she grew and flourished because she had the opportunity to learn outside of the textbook as well. And I think that's the other thing as well, is that the textbook can almost make us a slave to authentic learning. You don't, in my opinion, and this is just my experience, you don't need a textbook to bring learning to the classroom. It's all around you. The math is literally all around you, and I've been blogging a lot lately and sharing my students' learning simply by making the learning relevant to them. But then I question, and I know how successful some of my kids are, thinking outside of the text and really being engaged learners and having the opportunity to use hands-on materials. However, when it comes to the test, I worry about those, not the students who are going to be at or above provincial standard, those 70%. It's not them that I worry about. It's my concern is, what about the 30% that when they get to grade 7 after leaving grade 6, that they get a level 1, and what does that say to them? So I know there's no answers, but it's my experience that I wanted to just kind of express as well.
Okay, I'm sensitive to the time for each of you. I think what I'll do is I'll stop broadcast, but you're welcome to stay in the Hangout and chat a little bit more before you leave, or you can just head right back, because I know everybody's time is important. So stopping broadcast.